Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, here we are again, another week. It's after another loss. It's a tough one. Obviously, backup Nate Yarnell not able to complete the comeback. Pitt finds a way to lose off of a 50-yard touchdown run by quarterback Kate Klebnik of the Clemson Tigers, and it really sunk the Pitt Panthers. But Pitt is still 7-3. We're on to the next game. And right now, it's on to Louisville. And Louisville in itself is coming off a loss against Stanford, which was pretty crazy to think about. Never would have thought this game would have went to what it did in front of 18,000 fans at Stanford Cardinal Stadium. Louisville took a loss 38-35. Obviously, that was just crazy thinking about overall. Louisville at the time last week ranked 19th in the country per the college football playoff, which is what really matters most this time of year. We'll go into that. But the preview about players to watch and what we're going to look at when it comes to Louisville Cardinals, and I'll give you a prediction on who wins this football game. But guys, just you always know the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Guys, they've done a tremendous job, the customer service, but more importantly, even more options that they have at the store now, obviously run by two great Pitt men, people that I've known for quite a bit of time, to say the least. Tremendous people and how they do business, but what they do in general for the communities that they live in, but more importantly, what they're able to do for you, for your tailgates, your house parties. But now getting into the end of college football season and getting closer to bowl season, you got to enjoy these games. Go buy Colonial Beer at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102 to pick up your options. But more importantly, between your heavier lagers, your light beers, make sure when you're in there, get that Pitt Icy Light can that's in there. Obviously, a very cool opportunity to be able to pick those up. And the great collaboration between Icy Light and Pitt is really good for the University of Pittsburgh, guys. So make sure you go out and see my friends at Colonial Beer. Guys, also, the show is sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Right now, with many people struggling with the economy and rising costs, they're helping many people in the businesses with their debts, and they're offering free telephone consultations to assess all options available to those who are struggling, no matter the type of amount they are in. You can reach them at 724-799-8404 or at thompsonattorney.com. Again, Brian is someone that I use. I've known for a long time, another Pitt season ticket holder, a tremendous individual, comes from a great family, has a great family himself, and what he does in the community on a day in, day out basis. But more importantly, what he does overall for the client. You look at a lot of these larger law firms, a lot of times they look at you as a number. Brian Thompson is the complete opposite. He looks at you as the individual and cares about your overall results and what you need to be successful when you come see him. Obviously, I cannot say enough about Brian Thompson. Again, call him at 724-799-8404, or please go visit him at thompsonattorney.com. Guys, again, here we are, another week, a 3-game losing streak. It's got to break at some point. I think that obviously you look at the offensive line, we continue to shuffle in. I thought Jackson Brown did a really good job for his first time out there. Obviously, still, Clemson was able to have 7 to 8 sacks in the football game. I think 5 of those came in the first half. But that kind of stuff we were kind of expecting. Obviously, I did not have Pitt winning that game last week. I had them losing in a much larger fashion. To see that game and how it expanded out to where this offense really, while the offensive line, the pressure was not being able to be picked up, Pitt was really in control of that football game towards the end of the game, being able to come back, have a tie football game. Certainly had a lead there, 20-17. Couldn't hold it up. Obviously, Kate Klebnik ends up taking them down the field and then a 50-yard run. But overall, you looked at that football game, Nate Yarnell was able to pass. The backup quarterback for Pitt was able to pass for 350 yards. Even Georgia couldn't do that. The last time they've had 350 yards through the air given up, I think it was over 5 years ago. We talked about that after the game against Clemson. So that was a big major factor that was there. But also, too, in the running game, they were able to rush for over 100 yards. The offense itself actually outgained, total offense-wise, outgained Clemson. Penn had over 433 yards of total offense. You look at the offense, schematically, they were making adjustments. Schematically, they were able to move the ball, but just not being able to finish drives. Also, 2 bad penalties we saw by Pitt last week. That kind of stuff needs to get cleaned up. Procedure penalties, false start penalties, offside penalties we saw on the defense. The majority of the game, I thought the defense played pretty damn well. Really almost pitched a shutout to that last drive in the second half. Just couldn't hold off Clemson to close out the game. But now, when we go and look at the University of Louisville, we're looking at a team that really I thought, one, I was really nervous about, still kind of a little nervous about it because how well they play. Obviously, last year's was one of the very few wins out of the 3 games that Pitt won last year. This was one of them. Obviously, last year, if you remember, Christian Bayer was a starting quarterback last year for Pitt when they faced Louisville last year. Obviously, Pitt won that game 38-21, one of the few bright spots for Pitt last year. And then, obviously, this past week, again, Clemson ranked 19th in the country, 6-3 overall, 4-2 in the conference. They certainly had everything going in their direction. Louisville beat Clemson the week prior, but it's the ACC, and really anybody can get beat at any time. And you saw really Louisville falter on the West Coast. Obviously, I don't know if it was the flight. We talk about those types of games going back and forth, but they lose that game 38-35. And going back and through some of the stats here, some of the things that I picked up on, was able to take notes on. Tyler Show, their starting quarterback. I think he's a hell of a talent. I think he's actually a really damn good quarterback coming in this year. Obviously, last year was Plummer. This year's Show, I think, he's done a really good job for the majority of the year. Last week he was 26-39 for 270 yards, 1 touchdown to 1 interception. Not being able to get those opportunities where they were able to pass the ball in the end zone, but still 1 touchdown pass, 1 interception. I thought he did a really good job overall. And then you look at the run game. Duke Watson, a guy who was able to step in for a guy, they're starting running back who started that game, Isaac Brown, only had 2 carries for 3 yards because of a shoulder injury he sustained. I mean, to talk about the overall production, Isaac Brown's been able to have, obviously a true freshman running back, really having a magical season for how many yards he's been able to put up for Louisville. I think this is a football team that's going to try to run the football. And now, too, Isaac Brown's still in question right now. They're not sure if he's going to play this week. Sustained that injury again to the shoulder, and I'm not really sure right now he's even been cleared to even play this week. But they've also got a really good backup in Duke Watson, 11 carries for 117 yards, 10.6 average, concluded with 3 touchdowns in the game. So whether Isaac Brown plays or not will not hurt the running game in terms of what Louisville's going to try to do. Obviously, if Isaac Brown's able to go, they'll certainly have that 1-2 punch where Isaac Brown's really been having a hell of a year. How quickly does he recover? I wasn't able to go back into that game against Stanford, so I'm not sure he plays. But regardless, Duke Watson will be there. And then also, too, Donald Chaney had 6 carries for 21 yards as well. Obviously, not as much of a big impact, but they'll certainly have someone behind Duke Watson to take on some of those carries. And then in the passing game, when you look at their wide receivers, the one that really showed out this week, Chris Bell. Chris Bell, 9 receptions, 112 yards receiving, a 12.4 average, 1 touchdown, caught the lone touchdown pass from Tyler Show. He did a really good job this past week, especially too in between his targets and reception ratio. That was really good. Ja'Cory Brooks also had 9 receptions for 104 yards and 11.6 average. He did a really good job in this football game. And a guy to watch, too, I really have him as a third guy, but I think he does a really good job throughout the year, especially with his statistics, is Mark Redmond. Mark Redmond in the game had 3 catches for 19 yards. I think he's a guy that we could watch, too, especially, too, when you watch Rylan Gandy. Will probably be teamed up one-on-one, obviously, with Chris Bell. And you still have Ja'Cory Brooks back there, but I think Mark Redmond could be a guy to watch in terms of a guy who can potentially add up some statistics and some guy that really could produce some type of production for Louisville in the passing game. But those are really 3 guys that I'm watching in the passing game. And then, obviously, too, you look at the defense for Louisville. Ashton Daniels, the starting quarterback for Stanford, threw 22 of 33, 298 yards. Not a bad day, to say the least. 3 touchdown passes, 1 interception. So Louisville's defense struggled a little bit there with being able to hold back, having that opportunity to watch them, watch the tape back. I think still Louisville's a damn good football team. I think she's just one of those one-off games, maybe not being able to handle success what they had against Clemson, jumping up even further into the college football rankings. They dropped from 19 to out of the rankings now, according to the college football playoff. Justin Lamson, heck, he even had a pass in there for 25 yards and a touchdown. So overall, that was really good. But when you look at the run game for Stanford, Louisville did a really good job stopping the run. Cole Tab, 11 carries for 35 yards. And then you had Ashton Daniels between obviously design runs and then scrambles, had 22 carries for 34 yards. But their starting running back, Cole Tab, had 11 carries for 35 yards, really shut him down the entire portion of the game. And going back and watching the tape, I thought Louisville really did a really good job in the run fits that they were able to do on a consistent basis. Kind of reminded me of like watching like a Pat Narduzzi defense in terms of being able to stop the run. Usually if you're able to stop the run, that gives you a chance to win the football game, but more importantly, really gives you the upper edge. But as we saw these past two games this week for Louisville and Pitt, they stopped the run. I mean, heck, going into the fourth quarter or even that last drive for Pitt, they only gave up 9 yards rushing the entire game until Cade Klubnik. Same thing here with Louisville. They stopped the run really well, but were not able to survive and win that football game. Going through the quarter by quarter, it was a 21-13 game at the half for Louisville against Stanford. Louisville was up at the half 21-13. And then really the second half just took over, being outscored. Stanford outscored Louisville 8-7 in the third quarter. But the real separation came apart when Stanford outscored Louisville 17-7 in the fourth quarter to be able to take the victory against the Louisville Cardinals. That was something to be taken care of. But obviously, too, when you look at the players to watch in this game, again, we talked about how Louisville running back Isaac Brown, true freshman season, I would say really, I mean, almost to the point where it's going to be a damn good season, but almost historic in terms of what Louisville's able to do. He's less than 200 yards away right now. I think when he came out of the football game, they said he was 200 yards from what we were able to talk about on the television when I was watching the game, watching back on the tape. He's roughly about 200 yards away from 1,000 yards rushing, and then 167 yards away from breaking Lamar Jackson's freshman rushing record, which is pretty crazy to think about, obviously. I thought that was a pretty cool, unique stat when I was looking that up. 167 yards away from a guy like Lamar Jackson breaking his. Whether he plays or not is still really in question at this point. We'll be able to see in the long term. Probably, as we sit here today on a Thursday early in the afternoon, hasn't been cleared yet. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to play or not. But certainly a guy to watch for if he's able to play, whether he's healthy or not. Obviously, too, when you look at Pitt, Eli Holstein, a guy who could potentially be out. Louisville, that's probably the one guy I would think would be out. When it comes to Eli Holstein, Pat Narduzzi talked about this week that he has not been cleared yet to play in the game this coming week. I think personally, from people that I've talked to, that are somewhat close into the realm of the football program, I would expect Eli Holstein to play this week. I think he comes back. I think he'll be healthy. Pat Narduzzi also kind of hinted to that when talking about the quarterback situation after the football game this week. I think that'll be something interesting to watch upon, what that looks like going forward. But even if he can't go, Nate Yarnell obviously did a hell of a job being able to take a lot of pressure from the Clemson defense. Obviously took a number of shots. I mean, I think he took 7 or 8 sacks in the football game, was hit another 10 times on top of that. That's going to be something to watch going forward. But also, too, regardless if it's either going to be Eli or Nate Yarnell, I think at this point, I would feel comfortable. We'll see what Nate Yarnell is able to do on another week of practice if he does play. If not, I still like Eli Holstein, a guy who's a redshirt freshman, led Pitt to a 7-0 record, 7-2 record really overall. Even with him going out halfway, really in the beginning of the fourth quarter, when you saw him go out with obviously with a concussion, really, I think it would be his second concussion in 3 weeks. I think it was a smart move overall. Obviously not clear to play to begin with doctors. Obviously, the doctors are taking care of that. Obviously, Pitt has some of the best doctors in the world. But we'll continue to see what that looks like. But I think at this point, as we sit here on a Thursday, I would really expect Eli Holstein to play in this football game. Obviously, Jordan Bass is out for the year. We wish him the best. Daniel Carter, 6-year running back out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I thought he was having a hell of a year to this point. You saw him really running hard against Clemson. I thought he was having a hell of a football game. He's out for the remainder of the year with a leg injury. C.J. Lee, he's also out of the game, out for the rest of the year as well. He had surgery on Monday, according to people that we've talked to, and I think he put something up on Instagram as well to confirm that. So obviously he's out for the rest of the year. So we'll need those extra wide receivers on Pitt's end to really step up. Kanate Mumphy will be back there. Kenny Johnson will be back there. Dejon Reynolds. And then you got Raphael Poppy Williams is really your top 4 guys at this point. I think when you look at Pitt overall, the wide receiver room really needs to get it together to go back to what it did early on in the football season, where barely any drops, if any drops at all. I think we really hit the drop, the amount of drops in the wide receiver room these past 2 weeks. And you saw it again in the Clemson game where there were some drives where, Pitt's able to convert on a number of different plays, but drops led to those drives being able to stall and not be able to move forward. So the wide receiver room needs to step up this week in terms of not allowing as many drops as what we've seen the past couple of weeks. The same thing when it comes to the offensive line. I think when you look at the offensive line, Lyndon Cooper went out of the game. I think it might have been a cramp. Depending upon what he looks like, Terrence Moore could step in there. But you wanted to see that next step forward, take forward with the offensive line. Jackson Brown made his first career start ever in his career at right tackle. I expect him to be back there to build on top of that. In my opinion, I think he's probably the biggest offensive lineman Pitt has. So I think he'll be at right tackle. Right guard, obviously solidified by B.J. Williams, a guy who I think just has uber potential, continues to get better. I think the more time he plays as a true sophomore, he'll continue to get better as well. Lyndon Cooper, Terrence Moore at the center position. At left guard, you saw Ryan Jacoby go out with an injury. We're not sure if he's going to be back yet this week. I think potentially he may be out. You saw Collier go in there. You saw, obviously, Terrence Enos could play there. I think Caleb Holmes, as we start to end towards the season where you can't burn any red shirts to this point with only 3 remaining games, true games remaining for Pitt, 2 regular season games and a bowl game. You could see Caleb Holmes take some snaps here in the second half of this season, obviously, at the left guard position. So, I would look at potentially Collier, Enos, or Caleb Holmes. And then at the left tackle position, you've obviously got Ryan Bayer, who went from right tackle to left tackle after the injury from Branson Taylor, who is out for the year as well. So the injury bug has certainly hit. When it comes to Pitt at the wide receiver position, the offensive line, the quarterback position, we've seen it also at the running back position now. So a number of different injuries, but guess what? And Pitt's mentality is next man up. It's that simple. So when you're going forward, you're looking at those numbers of injuries. Those guys are there. Those are corrections that need to be made on the offensive side of the football for the University of Pittsburgh. When it comes to 3 Louisville players to watch, I've got 3 guys here. Duke Watson, obviously a guy who stepped in, another freshman running back with obviously Isaac Brown's status in question. A guy to watch for him. Obviously, Duke Watson had a hell of a game last week. Got 117 rushing yards at 3 touchdowns. That's going to be a guy that Pitt's going to need to watch this week. 3 guys. I mean, just one of the guys of the 3 that Pitt needs to take care of this week in the running game. In a Pat Narduzzi defense, you got to stop the run. And again, Pitt did that a great job this past week against Clemson. They got to do it again this week against Louisville. Another guy to watch here, I have Ramon Puryear, redshirt senior defensive lineman. He's having one heck of a year. He had only 3 tackles against Clemson, but obviously, I still think from going back there, he probably should have had a sack, probably really a 4th tackle for a sack. He's been very versatile on defense. He goes really back and forth between both sides of the defense, can go on either side. I bet if I had to bet, they'll probably line him up against against Jackson Brown on the right side, on the right tackle position, obviously because he's a younger guy, less experienced. I think that, you saw Clemson do the same thing with T.J. Parker. T.J. Parker really had a good day overall, was going back and forth between Jackson Brown and Ryan Bayer. Obviously, he was able to get 4 sacks in that football game. You want to see the growth of that offensive line as it's really been a turnstile up front for Pitt. You want to see them take that next step, but Ramon's a guy to watch. Lastly, Tamarion McDonald, senior safety. He had 7 tackles in that football game against the Cardinals, if I can count here correctly. I had here 1, 2. How many slash marks? I have 1, 2, 3. 3 tackles, but also 2. He's going to have to be a really good job. I think he does a really good job in the pass game as well, being able to have a pass breakups, pressure down in the box whenever he comes down to make tackles. He does a really good job there. So that's really a 3rd guy to watch from me. And obviously, too, again, he had 7 tackles in that game. When I watched the film on him, I thought he was all over the football field, and you heard his name. I mean, obviously, more than 7 times because he was around the football as well. Obviously, the 3 guys I think that need to step up in this game for Pitt to win this game. One, we know, obviously, Desmond Reed. I got Desmond Reed there. I think at this point on the offensive side of the football, he is the best player on Pitt's offense. We need to have him continue to do what he does. Obviously, recorded 68 yards on 14 rushing attempts against Clemson, but also, too, had 108 yards on 10 catches against Clemson as well. He's the first player since Christian McCaffrey. First player since Christian McCaffrey at Stanford to have 3 straight games of 50 yards rushing and 50 yards passing. 50 yards receiving, not passing. That'd be pretty sick if a running back had that many passing yards. But 50 yards rushing and 50 yards receiving. I mean, that's a hell of an honor, to say the least. This is a guy that Pitt fans were worried about coming from the FCS level to the FBS level. Well, right now, he's easily Pitt's best player on offense at this point. We need him to continue to step up. Obviously, my second guy here, Kyle Lewis, redshirt sophomore. I mean, and statistically, I thought Chris Peak put up a really good stat on X. If you don't follow Chris Peak, you should. He puts up a lot of good work. I think to this point, statistically, it's pretty much proven statistically that Kyle Lewis is truly the best linebacker in college football right now. He's a guy to watch, especially towards the end of the year. Pitt's going to have to take care of him for NIL wise, because there's going to be a lot of people after him. There's going to be a lot of teams after a number of players on Pitt's team, like anywhere else around the country. But Kyle Lewis, a guy overall here I had here, he led Pitt in 14 tackles here, 14 and a half tackles. And then he also has 7 sacks on the season, 4 interceptions overall on the season. The guy's just an absolute stud. You know, it's crazy to think about a guy like Kyle Lewis, how much he's developed. You know, that goes to a guy like Pat Narduzzi and Ryan Manilak, the linebacker coach. Ryan Manilak done a tremendous job being able to develop a guy like Kyle Lewis. He was purely a Temple commit before he decommitted to go to Pitt, 3-star recruit. He should be an all-ACC guy, a defensive player of the year for ACC, and he should be a unanimous All-American when it comes to being a linebacker. So he's another one. And then, of course, another linebacker for you, Rasheem Biles, sophomore linebacker. Again, he just continues to have a hell of a year. Another sack from this previous weekend, multiple tackles, a guy to watch. And I think overall, those are the 3 guys to watch. Again, I got 2 linebackers in there because they're having just a hell of a year. You know, I thought about on the Pitt side, a player to watch too. Again, Sincere Edwards continues to get better. Nate Matlack's getting to that point where he's up front. And obviously Francis Breu is another guy up front on the defensive tackle position with Sean Fitzsimmons, who continues to have a big year with Nick James as well. But I think those 3 guys for Pitt, Desmond Reed, Kyle Lewis, and Rasheem Biles, are 3 guys to watch. Also, too, from what I have here on the 21st early in the afternoon here, Louisville is still an 8-point favorite at home against our Pitt Panthers. Guys, when it comes down to a prediction in this game, I think it's going to be a close game. I really do. And I think whether it's going to be Nate Yarnell or Eli Holstein, I still think Eli Holstein plays in this football game. I think he starts. From what we saw last week, even with all the bad plays, the penalties, we saw Louisville come off a massive loss. They're coming back. They're obviously coming down from their height to where they're at. Obviously, they're going back home, but I think this will be a good challenging game for the Pitt Panthers. Obviously, our guys going out there. I think Pitt wins this football game 24-21. I've got a 3-point victory. Obviously, Pitt covers. Pitt wins outright. I think Pitt will do a really good job in this football game on defense. I think they'll be very aggressive again, especially when it comes to Louisville. I think the offense will certainly be able to move the football at times, but I still think until we're proven right on this offense, having a collective path, and especially too on the offensive line, what that looks like, I think we need to have something proven first. But I think to this point, they get 24 points. 24 points will be enough in this football game to get them that 24-21 victory. Guys, as always, let me know in the thoughts here, obviously in the comment section, your thoughts. I can't thank you guys enough for supporting the channel. If you've not done so, subscribe, like this video, subscribe again, share it with your friends. Let me know in the comment section, who are your players to watch? Who do you think wins this football game? What's your score prediction? And what really has you positive about Pitt, but also has you concerned about Pitt? I want to see both of those, and let's have that conversation in the comment section. Well, guys, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC. I'll see you guys next time.